second session on cyber law. In the first session, we have discussed about the recent challenges of the cyber crime which the society as of now is facing. Then we have discussed about the e-governance with the four components, specifically electronic document, electronic signature. Then we have discussed with the electronic services, how the services can be provided in the digital media. So today we are going to discuss about one of the most relevant topic, that is our cyber contravention and the cyber crimes, which as of now the entire society is facing. So it's my pleasure to see the participant in large in number. I'm thankful to all of you for your response, which I have got through email, which I have got through the comments. And today, a large number of participants have participated in the present webinar. So one of the issue where which I want to add here is, so before that I let me share my PPT on it. So one of the prominent issue here which I want to refer is that after the last session, we have received so many queries, but I would say the large number of queries which were being received were regarding the issue regarding the admissibility of electronic evidence, and particularly there were large number of questions regarding the artificial intelligence, blockchain, and deepfake video. So considering the demand of the participant, considering the importance of issue, we have kept a webinar on this, which would be on 6th June. And in this webinar, we are going to cover about the admissibility, authenticity of electronic evidence, what is the law relating to the primary and secondary evidence, and how to make an evidence admissible in court of law. Then we will discuss about specific issue regarding the admissibility and authenticity of SMS, WhatsApp messages, mobile, hard disk, cloud, artificial intelligence, blockchain evidence, and about the challenges of deepfake technologies. So anybody who is interested can join us. The detail is provided into this slide. So now coming to the today webinar. In the today webinar, we are going to discuss about what is the legal framework under the Information Technology Act. So we are going to discuss where you need to file the criminal complaint, where you need to file the civil petition for the damages. Then we are going to discuss about the cyber contravention and crimes, particularly the issue relating to the unauthorized access, data theft, introducing spyware. Because as of now, most of the crimes are being committed only through the spyware. Data theft is being done only through the spyware. So how to go for the prosecution of the spyware which is installed by the third parties. Then data destruction. So you can refer it to as a data deletion, data removal. It may be in a virtual way, it may be in a physical way. For example, a person can destruct the data by accessing your computer, but a person can do the same thing by destroying your computer. So we are going to deal with both the issues. Credit card frauds, identity thefts, cheating on the internet in the digital space, and in the last we are going to discuss about the cyber terrorism. So first, coming to the regulatory framework under the Information Technology Act. So it's very important to understand the information under the Information Technology Act. There are two bodies which regulates the entire civil damages, civil claim, and issue relating to digital signature. So first we have the regulator relating to the digital signature, that is controller of certifying authority. So if you have any issue relating to certifying authority, suppose you have purchased the digital signature, you are not getting the services, or there is any issue relating to the public key, private key, the proper authority where you can approach is the controller of certifying authority. Second, if you want to claim the damages for the loss caused to you, in other words, whenever a cyber crime is committed against you, it would have two consequences. The first consequence is the criminal act, for which you can go to the criminal court and prosecute him. You can register the FIR, then again the charge sheet will go to the criminal court, and you can always get the remedy. But it may have caused the financial loss to you. like in any other type of crime. Every crime has two impact. One, in a civil way, the loss which is caused to you. Second, the criminal offense, that the remedy for which there is a remedy under the criminal law. So when we talk about the civil remedy, when we talk about the loss caused due to the cyber crime for any of the offense under the Information Technology Act, so there are specific provisions which we are going to discuss in good detail. Then, if you want to claim the damages, the only platform which is available to you is the adjudicating officer. Please remember that jurisdiction of the civil court is barred. Civil court does not have the jurisdiction, but the jurisdiction of the adjudicating officer is only for the claim up to rupees 5 crores. But what if you want to claim more than 5 crore? You have to go before the court with a jurisdiction. For example, in Delhi, for claim more than 5 crore, you will have to go to the High Court. But at the same time, if you go to the UP, if you go to the other state, in number of states, the jurisdiction of the district court, particularly in civil cases, district civil court is unlimited. So even in UP, if you have a claim for 20 crore, you will have to go to the district court. So then that point you need to remember, and accordingly you need to find out the jurisdiction of the court where your case would lie. Now, you have sought the remedy before the controller of certifying authority, you have sought the remedy before the adjudicating officer. But what if you want to challenge their order? What if you are not aggrieved by their judgments? So the proper form is the Cyber Appellate Tribunal, which is now termed as TDSAT. So that is the remedy available to you. Then we have, for the criminal case, we have the remedy only before the criminal court. And for any appeal against the order of TDSAT or for our hierarchy in our criminal court, then we have the High Court and Supreme Court. So this is the regulatory framework under Information Technology Act. Now coming to the cyber contravention and offenses. So if you go to the IT Act, these are the two terms which are used. So cyber contraventions are provided under section 43 and 43A. Cyber contraventions are those contraventions for which you have a civil remedy, you have a criminal remedy, both of the remedies under the Information Technology Act. For cyber offense, you have a criminal remedy under the Information Technology Act, but for the civil remedy, you have to go before the civil court in a for the seeking the damages. So here again I would say, for cyber contravention you have the two remedy, that is under section 43 and 43A, and that remedy would be before the adjudicating officer. For cyber offenses, these are the criminal remedies which you can get before the criminal court. But in cyber contravention, you can have a criminal remedy as well as the civil remedy. So the criminal remedy for cyber contravention is provided under section 66. So we'll come to it. Now we are coming to the one of the most important provision, and rather I would say the only provision which deals with the cyber contravention. So the one of the basic requirement for any act to fall within a definition of cyber contravention is the unauthorized access. So it says, if any person without permission of the owner or any other person who is in charge of the computer system or network commits any violation mentioned in section 43 clause A to clause J. So these are the 10 particular remedies which we will discuss in detail. But here I want to clarify that the act should be done without permission. For example, a person does not have access but unauthorizedly access a computer the moment the requirement is satisfied. Second, a person has a authorization to access like an employee, but he copy and download for which he does not have a permission. Again, the offense is, that particular violation is complete. So that is the mandatory. And the another thing which I have discussed with you earlier also, that under section 43, you can make a claim, but only limited to 5 crore. For claim above 5 crore, you will have to go to the court of pecuniary jurisdiction. That you need to keep in mind. But in criminal cases, particularly in the IT cases, computing damages would be one of the challenging issues. That you need to be very careful whenever you are creating anything in a information technology medium. So please try to compile the evidence so that tomorrow, if you have to file a claim, you can corroborate your claim. You can corroborate your loss, saying that I have been caused a loss of 5 crore. But again, you have to prove. So I have seen in a number of cases, though they have a big loss, but parties are not able to explain, prove it in the court of law. So that's the point you need to take care. Now coming to section 66. So we have discussed in beginning also, in the last slide, I also explained that all the contravention would be criminal offense. But how? Under what section? So section 66 says, if any contravention which is provided under section 43 is done with a dishonest and fraudulent intention. So the only difference between 43 and 66 is, when it is only 43, it is a civil violation, you can claim the damages. The moment it is done with a dishonest or fraudulent intention, it would become a criminal offense under section 66, which is cognizable, bailable. So you can directly register a FIR with the police on this account. So meaning of the dishonestly and fraudulently is the same, which is provided under section 24 and 25 of the Indian Penal Code. Now we are coming to all 10 type of offenses with under section 43 one by one. So the first offense, a very simple offense. It says, if you access the computer of any person without permission, it on itself is a complete offense. It's a complete violation. So that means if there is a computer in your office, a person comes from outside, access your computer without your permission, contravention is complete. So you can claim the damages for it. But in order to constitute an offense under section 66, you have to prove that the unauthorized access was for dishonest or fraudulent intention. Can we prove it? Yes. For example, if the person has access to your computer, have taken some data which is sensitive, have taken your password, or have taken any information which have been used by him for his own benefit, for having any wrongful loss, or for causing any wrongful loss to you, or wrongful gain to himself. In both the cases, even in either one of the situations. For example, there is no gain to him, but there is a loss to you. Even then, your claim would be maintained. So, simply accessing the computer without permission is an offense. Again, I want to add here that your mobile is a computer. Keep it in mind. So, any device which has the three functions. So I am telling you the definition of computer, which you can apply on any device. Any device which has three functions: logical, arithmetic, and memory. If these three things are there, that is a computer. So if you apply the same, your TV, which as of now, the latest TV has all these three functionality, it is also a computer. Your automated washing machine may fall within the category of computer. Now we are coming to clause B. Again, a very important clause. I would say, if 100 complaints are being filed under the Information Technology Act, 70% lie under this clause. And what this clause constitute? Downloading, copying, or extracting any data from any computer. So basically, it deals with all the offenses where the data is stolen. Data may be stolen by employee, data may be stolen by outsider, data may be stolen by hacking, by any mechanism. When the data is stolen, that would fall under clause B. And where the criminal offense would be registered? Under section 66. So that you need to keep in mind. That for claiming damages, you will file an application under section 43B. Before whom? Not the civil court. Before the adjudicating officer. For the claim up to 5 crore, for more than, you will go to the court. And for criminal offense, you will go to the criminal court. And you can avail, keep in mind, you can avail both the remedies at the very same time. There is no bar. So now I'm discussing with you one of the interesting case on this section 66, how the data have been stolen. So this is one case regarding theft of telephony minute or data. So Net4India is one of the company which is an intermediary. We all know they provide lot of services. So what happened? First I explained you what was the model. So this company was selling the telephony minute in the local market for making it the international call, right? They used to purchase the telephony minute from US. In the US, it was purchased by their one of the associate companies, Net2India, Net2Phone. And Net2Phone, after purchasing the telephony minute, kept all the telephony minute on their server. And what was the business model? Net4India, whenever they require the telephony minute, they used to access the server of Net2Phone and copy them and sell them in the local market. So that was the business model which they were operating. So just I'm explaining you because most of you are having the technical background, you might be knowing what is the relevancy of telephony minute. So if, for example, if I have to make a call from Skype to Skype, no money is being charged. I'm not required to pay anything. But the moment I have to make a call from Skype to landline, they ask me to pay some amount. And why they ask you to pay some amount is, so I'm explaining here how that system works. So that will give you the complete clarity why they ask the money. When I make a call, see, when you make a call from the internet, you are connecting to your computer. And when you make the call goes from your computer to the internet cloud. From internet cloud, it goes to the gateway. But when the call has to be made to the landline or mobile, that call needs to be switched from the online network to the public switch. So here you see that when call goes from internet cloud to the gateway, from gateway it goes to the public switch. For example, if I have to make a call in the US, in the US it will go through the internet, but for routing the call to the landline or mobile, it will get switched to the public switch. So that is the public platform regarding the transmission of the local call. And then it connects to the local telephone or local mobile. So that was the framework. That's why the telephony minutes were being sold, because when we make a call using these telephony minutes, it is cheaper as compared to the internet's ISP calls, right? Now, the company Net2India detected the theft of telephony minute. But how theft could take place? The reason is that telephony minute are on the server of Net2Phone, and they are accessing, copying, and selling in the market. And access have been given only to the internal employee. There is no outsider. So, if we go analyze this particular framework, this particular architecture, it clearly reveals that it is the work of some of the insider to whom the access have been given. So they find that these minutes are being sold into the market, and they matches with the telephony minutes which were on their server. So that is a conclusive proof that the telephony minutes were being sold into the market. And from the architecture, we can always made out, because access have been given only to the 5 employees of the company. It has not been given to anyone else. So that means the person who is stealing is only 1 out of 5. So how to detect it? So what they did, they changed the password and restricted the password only to the 2 employees. So then they were trying to analyze it. So that was the internal audit work which was being done. So that's why the importance of the internal audit and internal investigation in IT cases is very, very important. Because when you file a complaint with the police may not be able to understand. But if your person who is an internal auditor or internal investigator has done the investigation, collected the evidence and given it to the police, success in such cases is ensured. So I'm telling you now, this is going to open a big scope for the such type of internal auditor, or we can say the forensic person who can do this forensic analysis. In some other section, I will discuss about in detail how you can become a forensic investigator for this particular objective, which will have the ample of opportunities for you. So now what happened? The access have been given only to the 2 person. So then they collected the log of net2phone. Then the log reveals that on 19th of August 2005, somebody tried to access from the IP address 221.134.63.151, but failed because the password was incorrect. So that is clearly indicator that somebody is trying to access. But on the very next day, on 20th August, the person was able to have the access from an IP address which does not belong to the company. So you get a clue. You have the connected detail and authentic information from which IP address it has been stolen. But whether the internal auditor can link to whom it belongs? Yes. So these are some of the ways through which even you can analyze the internal data to find out who is the culprit. So let us see how it has been done. So then one of their employees who was part of this 5 person who had been given the email ID of the company, right? Now what that employee did, he was accessing on his own email account. But what mistake he has done? He went to one cyber cafe. From the cyber cafe, he was accessing the IP of the net2phone, and at the same time, from the same cyber cafe, from the same computer, he was accessing his own email ID. So that is a conclusive evidence that is the same person is using the same IP, accessing both the things. But this email ID belongs to the company, and company is maintaining the log. When company analyze their own system, they find that this is the person, this is the employee Harish, who is accessing from the same IP. You see in the last row, from the same IP from which he has accessed the net2phone and stolen the data on 20th August at 0030 hours. From the same IP at the very same time, he is accessing his own email ID. In fact, it is a conclusive evidence sufficient for the conviction of that. So that's how you can create a network into your company, how to detect the fraud. But here the important thing is how you are going to preserve the log and how you are going to make it admissible in the log. That we are going to discuss in our session on electronic evidence. Another case, so it's also a very important case where the data has been stolen. Now see JP Morgan, a bank with best of the IDS, IPS, firewall and computerized system with a team of cyber security experts. But still the hackers were able to steal the data. And the common modus operandi which is being used for stealing the data in such cases is, first, what the hacker are doing, they want access into your server. Your server does not provide any direct access. Then how they can take the access? So in every case, see, I have to take access into any building. I cannot directly move into the building. I will see where are the staff quarter. I move into the staff quarter. From there, I move into the counter. So that is the same thing is being done in most of the cases. They compromise with one account of one of the employee. Once the account is compromised of the employee, then they, by escalating the privileges, they move into the server and then stolen the data. But in such cases, the offenses are in multiple. The moment they install spyware, you have a separate offense under section 43 clause C that we are going to discuss. Stolen the data, 43B. Then they use the data for transferring the money, then the other offenses of the IPC would also get addressed. Right? So 43B is the very important provision. It deals with, again, I'm coming to deal with all the three things. You have a downloading, copying or extracting. It also includes the copy. Right. Now let us come to the 43C. 43C. So basically, it applies to an offense where some spyware is being used or introduced for any purpose. For example, as of now, for stealing your data from mobile, even the hacker are using the spyware. Stealing from the data from your computer, they are using the spyware. But again, for spyware, we have a two provision under the information technology. One, spyware which is being used for stealing the data for the offenses, ordinary offenses. Second category is the offenses relating to cyber terrorism. That is under section 66F. That we will discuss later on. But here, this would apply when the spyware is installed into your mobile or computer. But again, in such cases, the important, biggest challenge is, you know that your mobile is having a spyware. Something is wrong, but how you are going to prove it? So that is one of the biggest challenges. For that, you need the help of a forensic expert. So now this is one of the case, a very interesting case. So one of my clients called me in the evening, Mr. Arora, 1,50,000 have been stolen from my credit card. Somebody has done unauthorized transaction. I asked him whether it's asked. He said yes. Next question, my next question was, whether you received any OTP? He said yes, I received a number of OTP. So my next question was whether you shared the OTP with anyone? He stated, I have not shared the OTP with anyone. Then how the money can be stolen from your account? So when we further diagnose the issue, we come to the finding which is very strange, interesting. You must know it. So then we find that there are a number of spyware which are available on the internet for free. So this is one of the spyware which is available on the internet for free. You download it, put into the mobile of any other person. You can access all the SMS, all the data which that person is receiving on his mobile in real time. Because the moment you purchase it, it allows you to create an account on their website. Then whatever SMS you will receive, it will show on their website with a gap of 1 second. So that means I can see all the SMS which you are receiving, even I am able to hear your voice call. So as of now, the spyware are being used for every offense committed on computer or in cyberspace. Make sure you do not become the victim of it. Otherwise, not only your privacy is going to compromise, but also you may become victim for so many offenses, because then the hacker would have access to all your SMS, your call, your data, it may be your password, your banking data, everything would be accessible to the hacker. Now coming to clause 43D, that deals with the disruption of computer network. So what is a computer network? It's simply connected through wire. And the very simple example of it is, if I disconnect the wire, it would be disruption. The another and the advanced way of doing the disruption is in a number of ways. For example, when number of computers are connected in a network, then that IP address allocation is done through the DHCP table. So even if somebody altered, then again it would be a disruption. Third, the way which the hacker use is by DDoS attack or DOS attack. That is done mostly in cases of tender, online transaction. For example, if you are doing something very important and I now want to, I want that you should not be able to access the computer resources. What I can do? I can execute a DOS attack. I can have the send you multiple packets through the network of the board. And when I will send you the multiple packets through the board, your bandwidth would be choked and you cannot access the resources. So that is one of the technique which is being used by the hacker for committing a crime on the internet. Then we have the clause 43E, damaging any computer system. But what do you mean by damage? So in explanation to section 43, it says damage means the copying, deletion, destruction of data. So when we are talking about the damage, we are talking about the virtual damage. But can virtual damage be done in a physical manner? Answer is yes. For example, if you have a laptop, a person takes the laptop and damage it to such an extent that hard disk is damaged and his intention is to damage your data, then it would fall here. But on the other hand, if there is a petty criminal who only take it, who steal, who take away from, who snatch the laptop from you, again, it would be a damage, but not with the intention to destroy your data, because he does not know what your data is. So, in the first case, it would be an offense falling under the IT Act. In the second case, it would be an offense falling under the IP Act. Now coming to the another very important provision, denial of access. What do you mean by denial of access? The moment your password is stolen, you are denied from accessing the computer. So any denial of access to any computer, any data, or any architecture, that would fall into this category. For that means, even if you are not able to access your online account, it may be Facebook account, it may be your email account, it may be your online bank account. Because somebody has changed the password, somebody has stolen the password. So these are the type of offenses which would fall under clause F. G, where anybody facilitate the unauthorized access. For example, I have to hack your I want to hack your company. But when I'm sending the packet for hacking, your firewall does not allow. It does not allow my packet to go inside your company. I tell your IT expert to help me. I tell him, please disable the firewall for 10 minutes so that I can send my data packet into your computer. He is facilitating the unauthorized access. So that these type of offenses would fall under clause 43G for the person who are facilitated. So let us see one of the case on it. So this is very interesting case, and a unique case. So what was the case? The case was relating to a share broker, and one unauthorized transaction was executed in the account of one of the client of the share broker. So it was the transaction of 2005, and at that time what happened? Technology was not so much advanced as it today. At that time, if you want to access, you want to do the share transaction online, the one thing which you need to do is you need to get a broker used to provide the settings to you, to which port, to which IP address to connect, and then you will connect the computer and you can do the transaction. Right? So that was the one part. Second was, now how the offense was done. In the share market, you can match the transaction. For example, if I have to sell something at 100 rupees, you are a buyer on the opposite side, but if I can match the transaction fraudulently, and I sell that transaction at 50 rupees. The price of which is into the market is 100 rupees. So you can match it, and when you will get at 50 rupees, the benefit which should have accrued to me, or the loss which has which is there because of the difference in the price would be caused to me, and benefit will cause to the opposite party. So these are the advanced techniques for transferring the profit and loss, and these techniques are also being used for transferring the corruption one. So particularly the people who are from the income tax department, Department of ED, CBI, they know this thing very well. So now what has been done in this case is that the employee who was the employee of the broker has given the setting to the one of the outsider. He has also given the password of the one of the another outsider. So now criminal was having the password of one of the client. Criminal was also having the setting which are required to be done in the computer. So what he did, he went on the internet, he connected to the share market, and from the login he executed the fraudulent transaction. On the other side, so on one side he has sold the material which was to be sold at 100 rupees for 50. On the other side, he has already executed, he has already put the buying trade at 50 rupees. So these both were connected, and profit was shifted to his account. Wrongful gain was being made by the accused himself. So these are the type of the cases involving advanced technology, but here number of sections would be applicable apart from section 66 because it is under clause 43B, right? But the person who is the software employee who has helped him in providing the unauthorized access would be prosecuted under clause 43G. Now coming to 43H. So this refers to the credit card transaction or transaction. For example, you might have seen in particularly Paytm and the online bank account that somebody has executed the fake transaction. He has made the fake purchase and your account has been debited. So these type of crime would fall in the clause 43H. So it's a very important provision. Kindly note it. 43I. Anybody access your computer, destroy your data, delete or alter the information. And in the last very important word is diminish the value or affect it injuriously. So I tell in a very plain word. Somebody copy your data and sell in the market. What would happen? The value of your data would reduce. So when an act that is particularly into the electronic medium, that is particularly into the IT domain, that is not there in physical domain. So this section is specifically crafted for the IT offense. So then it would be an offense under section 43I. Let us come to one of the case study. So this is one of the case where one of the company, Messer Parsec Technology Limited. So what they were doing, they were buying the raw data from the US. After buying the raw data of the client from the US, they used to create the lead. So what the lead is, after getting the telephone data from US, their employees used to make the call to the foreign client for the leads for the insurance business or any type of business. So whatever the leads which are developed, then they used to sell that lead into the US market. That is simple model which is being adopted by so many BPOs. Now coming to how the offense was done. So before that I tell you, see how it was done. So this company is our complainant, PTI India. They used to buy the data from US through one of their associate company, PTI USA, right? So that was the model. They used to buy the data, and after purchasing the data was being sent, data was being scrubbed in their office for removing the number which comes into the category of do not call list. And after that, what they used to do, once the data is filtered, then the data was being sent to the call center for the purpose of developing the lead. So now the employee of the call center used to make the call. talks to the customer, ask them whether they are interested into the business. So if they are interested, so then they would be called as a hot leads. Then these hot lead will go to the company, then they used to send it to their USA company, then these are being sold in the market. Now what their employees were doing, when the data is scrubbed from particularly this point, the data they were stealing and they were sending it to their own call center from where they used to send to their own company, and data was being sold to the customer in the US. So basically it is a perfect case of systematic cyber crime being executed by stealing the data in the company. So when the case was registered by the police went to the call center from where the accused were getting the leads developed. So they took the data from the call center, they compared with their own data. So now the police was having the data from both the sources, one from the complainant and the another is which the accused persons have shared with the call centers. So that data was circulated, shared from the email ID. So they collected all the email ID, they collected the emails, they collected the header. And in the header, when they checked the IP address, they found that these accused person were sending the data from the office itself. So IP address belongs to the company itself. And their employees were sending the data. So then they have taken the data from call center, then they compared the data. So data was in SQL format. So they compared it by executing the SQL queries. And it was a beautiful case where there was a scientific evidence in the form of a electronic data, which was also supported by the certificate under section 65B, and the case resulted into the conviction. Now coming to the 43J, this is a special provision for source code. So if anybody steal, conceal or destroy, see, as of now, what is your most important property into the IT world? The most important property is the source code. If any person steal, conceal or destroy computer source code, then it would be an offense under clause 43J. But if such source code is required to be maintained by law, so there is any provision in the law which require that the source code should be maintained, then it is an offense under section 45 of the IT Act. So now we have one of the judgment on that particular section 65 of the IT Act, Syed Asifuddin and other versus State of Andhra Pradesh. Way back in 2005, you might be remembering at that time, we used to have the mobile phone with the CDMA connection. And at the initial stage, prior to having a SIM card, they were binded with the phone. So if you want to have a connection, you need to have a phone, you have to go to the service provider, they will embed a number into your mobile phone. That this offense was done at that particular time. At that time, the company Reliance has come with a scheme whereby they were providing the phone at a very discounted prices, provided you buy their connection. So that was one of the requirements. So what the people did? The mobile of 10,000 were getting into 1,000. So the people purchased the mobile phone, but instead of continuing with the Reliance connection, they removed the software, they altered the software, and they moved to the CDMA. And this was done by the various stakeholders, by various franchises, various shopkeepers in the market. So then that case was registered. So the issue before the court was that when that particular software which had been given by a Reliance company under a particular terms of the contract, and it has been deleted, altered, so whether it would amount to theft or destruction of the source code. So the answer of the court was that yes, it is an offense which falls under section 65 of the IT. Then we have a section 66A which deals with the various issues, particularly your harm to the reputation, annoyance, etc. on the internet, but that have now been repealed in the judgment of Sharia Singhal, where the court has held that this section is unconstitutional because the words which are used in that particular section are subject to the vague interpretation. So that was the reason. But this is one of the gap under the IT Act because as of now we do not have the alternative to it. So then coming to section 66B. So section 66B is a very important section, and this section makes the possession of stolen data and device as an offense. So how you need to visualize it? You take an example of mobile. If it is stolen, now normally the police register a case under section 411, 411 IPC. But as per the IT Act, it is a offense under section 66B. Right? Now, how does it make a difference? So there are two differences which are very important. Number one, when there is a specific provision under the IT Act, police has to follow the same. Police does not have a discretion to use any other provision. So that is the first point. Second is, offense under section 66B is bailable. On the other side, the offense under section 411 is non-bailable. So if the police register under 411 but not under section 66B, even it amounts to manipulating the evidence to keep the person, to keep the accused in the custody. So that's another way to look upon it. So if it is a case where 411 has been invoked, at the time of charge, you can challenge it. Even at the time of conviction, you can challenge it. In one of our case, which was at the fag end of the trial, and we took the plea before the court that section 66 cannot be invoked. Sorry, section 411 cannot be invoked, and only section 66B would be made out. Only on this ground, the court acquitted that. Now coming to section 66C. Identity theft. So identity theft is also a standalone crime. Even if you steal the identity of any other person, and even you do not do any other further crime, still it will be an offense. Still it will be an offense. Still it would be an offense under section 66C. So section 66C deals with the three things: making the fraudulent or dishonest use of the electronic signature, password, or any other unique identification. That's a very simple example. If I create an email ID by your name, it may not be an offense. The reason is email ID can be created by anyone, and there is no law which says that the email ID should be created by the same name. And again, with the same name, there are thousands and lakhs of them. But apart from email ID, when I send the communication, I also use the mobile number, address of that particular person. Then it will become a unique identity. So in such a case, the fake mail, in such a case, any mail coming from such email ID would constitute an offense under section 66C for identity theft. So that's why all the emails which comes to you regarding the this Nigerian fraud, asking for lottery, asking for your PIN, asking for your account number, or even if a person is telling you on the mobile phone that I'm speaking from State Bank of India, please tell me the OTP. Even then you may not give any OTP, even though no loss is caused to you, still it would be a complete offense under section 66C of the IT. All the cases where the fake profiles are being created, they would fall into the category of the they would fall under section 66C of the ITA. Make sure, even if your fake profile is created but it has not been misused for any illegal purpose, still the offense is complete. Then we have the section 66D. Now, the example which I will discuss in the last slide, that you got a call from State Bank of India officer. He asked you for the OTP. You have not provided the OTP. Then the offense is under section 66C. But even if you provide the OTP and you have delivered some money, then the offense would be under section 66D. So that means till no loss is caused, the offense is under section 66D. The moment loss is caused, the offense will fall under section 66D. So this is one of the cases where one of the hacker, what he did, he impersonated, created the fake communication, showing himself to be the BJP leader and tried to create the fabricated communication between the BJP leader and wanted gangster Dawood Ibrahim. So this was done for political purpose. So where such impersonation is being caused, it would be an offense under section 66C, apart from the other offenses which are applicable in such case. Cyber terrorism, a very serious offense, which provides the punishment for more than 10 years. But you need to remember when it would be constituted. So it has a three component. Component number one is the intention. So what is the intention? In the first line, we can see, with the intent to threaten the unity, integrity, security or sovereignty of India, or to, now last line is very important, to strike terror in any section of people. So these should be the intention. Now coming to what are the act. So there are three acts. One, first, who causes denial of access to computer resource. That means if you go to the website of the railway and it does not allow you to access the server because server is hacked. So that is the one situation. Or has unauthorized access to computer resource. For example, now the hacker, when hacking the railway server, have unauthorizedly accessed the server. So that would be the second part. Third, introduce a virus or containment. So that is the second provision relating to the virus. Fourth, now coming to the effect. So first we have discussed the intent, then we discuss the act. Now we are discussing the effect. Effect would be to cause the death, injury to person or damage, destruction of property or disruption of essential supplies. Disruption of essential supplies. And the second part of the offense is when the access has been made to any information, any data which is for the security of the state. Right? For example, you might have heard about number of incidents where the case is that Chinese hacker has hacked into the server of CBI, server of Home Ministry, and stolen the data. So here the data is sensitive and data is for security of state. Even such offenses would fall into the category of the cyber terrorism. So now, this case which we have even discussed in the last session, where what the hacker did, they hacked the server of Estonia and nothing moved in the Estonia for 9 days by a single inch. So when they hacked it, it has two components. Please try to appreciate. First component is they hacked it. Second component is that because of the hacking, the local people cannot avail the services, cannot have access to the resources. So these two acts are, now let us see what is the definition of cyber terrorism. Now these two acts constitute cyber terrorism. So this is one of the examples. Second, the virus, the world most genius virus, Stuxnet, which we have discussed in the last session, which was inserted by the US and Israel into the Iran to stop their nuclear development work. So putting such viruses would also be an offense of cyber terrorism, right? Hacking of Ukraine power grid. Again, if you see this case, it constitutes all the component of the cyber terrorism. Let us see how. In this case, hacker hacked into the Ukraine power grid. After hacking, they deleted all the software and Ukraine power grid stopped working. So now if we go by the definition of the cyber terrorism, act number one who causes denial of access to computer resources. Naturally, when they hacked, they deleted the software. The person who could have access was not able to access. Number two, has unauthorized access to computer resource. Hacker, when they moved into their computer by installing the backdoor, that is the unauthorized access. And what is your backdoor? It is your virus or containment. So this is one of the case which is the best example of cyber terrorism. Then we have the number of cases where the cases are that the Pakistan hacker has hacked into the some of the companies or which are providing the essential services. So these are the cases which would cover under the cyber terrorism. But in most of the cases where in India the provision of cyber terrorism has been applied, Still, I have to see even a single case where the offense is properly made out under Section 66 Act. Then we have the compounding of offense. Offense under the IT Act where the punishment is 3 years are compoundable. But if the offense is with respect to the children, with respect to the woman, it is not compoundable. Or if a person is convicted for the first time for the second offense, it is not compoundable. Investigation has to be done by the officer, not below the rank of inspector. Then now coming to the whether the offense is bailable or not. So then if the punishment is 3 years, the offense is bailable up to 3 years. If it is more than 3 years, it is non-bailable. If it is 3 years or more, then it is cognizable. Otherwise, it is not cognizable. That's it. The provision of this act has an overriding effect. So law says if a particular offense is made out under two statutes, like for example under the IPC and under the IT Act, the IT Act would prevail. And in this segment of Supreme Court, the court has stated that, just a minute, let me get court has stated that if the provision of IT Act are applicable, you cannot invoke the provision of IPC, right? Then we have the two other provisions which deals with, one is the abatement. So if any person abet any offense under the IT Act, he is liable to the punishment which would be 1/2 than the punishment of the second particular offense. Second is when a person attempt to commit an offense, then again the punishment would be half for that particular offense, right? So now we have completed our session 2. So after the last session, we have got so many requests to deal with the various issues relating to the particular act. So then we have now devised this course which will take you to the more deeper side of the Information Technology Act, and we'll cover all the issues along with the cases and judgment. And here we are going to have more than 25 video, more than 10 sessions on it. And again, we are going to share one book also. And apart from that, there will be one-to-one communication where we will take the queries of our participant and we will reply to them. Then we have also, after this now incident of voice locker room case, where the minor child was sharing the data of the minor girls on the internet. So just with an objective to educate and to make the people aware, we have created a small course on it, which will give you a deeper insight how to protect the children from pornography, how to handle the issue relating to the all the offenses relating to the child pornography, or if you have become a victim. And particular session which we have included here in this session is what would be the liability of school, media, and companies, and how the remedies are to be pursued in the court of law, right? So we are going to cover all these issues only with an objective to create the awareness about this course. So this is my Twitter ID. So you can always connect with me on Twitter ID, and you will get the insight to all our courses. And if there is any question, you can put there. Then these are my social media IDs where you can join, you can follow me, and you can see what are my articles, what are my video, what are my webinars, or any other issue you have. Now in the third session, what we are going to cover is number 1, all the issues relating to privacy and personal data, issues relating to the intermediaries, issues relating to the liability of the companies, issue relating to the pornography, adult pornography, as well as the child pornography. Any other issue you want me to cover, please send me your message. Now we are going to take the questions from the participants. So there is a question from Dr. Anchal Arora. Once hacked, can we get our lost data back? See, there are a number of ways to look upon it. The first is that the data is hacked and deleted, but forensic method you can recover. Second is the data is stolen by the local hacker and the police can catch hold of it. Then again, the police can recover the data from that. But there may be situation where the data is hacked, but hacker could not be traced or tracked. In such a position, it cannot be hacked. So second question we have from Paheli Sharma, and the question is, Section 66A has been declared unconstitutional. So on which ground the person will be punished if she commit a cyber crime where she use abusive word for someone over the internet? See, as far as the woman is concerned, there is no issue under Section 354 under IPC. We have so many provision. Even for the children, we have so many provision. But there is a gap only for the men and companies. There, the only remedy would be available. Would be defamation, though it may also not be applicable in all the cases, depending upon the content and the context. But as far as the woman is concerned, you will have all the remedies. So next, the question is how to certify the digital evidence. So the question is from Mr. Ayush. So the best way to get it certified is from the forensic lab. That's the best way to do it. It serves two purposes. The purpose one is, first, it authenticates. Second, then there is a technical expert who is standing in the court and who is explaining it, right? Who will prove the offense also. And once the electronic evidence is proved, that you will have the remedy in the court, and the accused would be convicted for that. Third question I have from Swati. Is it illegal to use the free spyware software available on the internet? If yes, then why they are available freely? Yeah, it's a very good question. So most of the spyware also have the other good possible uses also, right? For example, most of these softwares are available in the form of a parental control software. So then they allow the parent to put this software into the mobile or computer of their children and to see what they are doing. That's the one part. Second is they are also used by the company to put into their computer to observe the activity of their employee or their customer, but there they are required to declare it that they are going to use it. So that is the purpose why they are available. So the next question we have from Mr. Mohan. And the question is how to file the case if she or he has done crime in digitally. It does not make a difference whether the offense is done digitally or whether it is done physically. Particularly, your IT is only for the offense which is done in the digital space, right? So next question we have Mr. Manoj from Mr. Manoj Pandey. How proposed data privacy law will change the cyber law? Though it is going to amend the existing cyber law from a very number of perspectives, but certainly it is going to be focused only on the personal data. Though now the government is also going to include the non-personal data also. So the present bill would reform the provision relating to the personal data. Only to that extent it will affect the existing cyber law, but certainly it will provide a very good remedy in your hand to protect your personal data, which have now already been declared as a constitutional right by the Supreme Court. Then we have the question, another question saying how we cure our phone to cyber attack. See, the best way is that two or three things you need to remember. Number one is do not download any attachment on your mobile, the source of which is not known to you. Number two, do not hand over your mobile to any other person, even for a 1 or 2 minutes, and keep it password protected. Number three, whenever you get any message and there is a web link into the message, please do not click on it, right? So these three things you need to remember. And even subsequent to this, because of any reason, you feel that your mobile is not working properly, or it is working slowly, or then you must format it to the factory setting at the earliest, because hacker are now in a position to put the spyware into your mobile, even though you may not have done any overt act. Right? So next question is from Ayush is, sir, if someone abuses another through personal call or WhatsApp message, so she is punishable. Even if you do it through telephone call, the offense will be made out. But again, what is the abuse, whether it is a woman to a woman or man? So for the man, we have a very limited remedy. But for the woman, you have a remedy in the law. So next question we have from Love Preet, saying that can parent be also held liable for unauthorized access if the child is major? No, parent cannot be held liable. But again, if the parent had provided any support for the abetment, they can be made liable. But it would be always contextual depending upon the fact of the case. Then we have the case from Ravi Kumar. Please explain about section 84B IT. So 84B is regarding the attempt, right? So it's a very simple provision. That means if a person has attempted to do any crime, for example, a person has tried to hack your account, he was not able to hack, but the offense is complete. So then it would be an attempt. Next question we have from Pankaj Chaudhary. Question is, if any web server had bug, then using such loophole to access, whether it will come under purview of unauthorized access? Yes. If my house is open, I leave the door open, whether it allows you to come into my house? No. The same thing is here. If there is a bug, anybody can enter, but that is not an invitation to enter. You are not being permitted. It would still continue to remain the offense. So next question we have, cyber forensic expert of government employee can give certificate under section 65B with the forensic report. The question is from Ravinder Mahajan. So, Mr. Mahajan, my answer is no certificate is required from the forensic expert, and even the forensic expert cannot give it. So, there are few judgment on it also that we are going to discuss in our session on electronic evidence in good detail. But for your answer, he cannot give. He is not even competent to give. Then we have another question from Sri Pankaj Kumar. Sir, is there any law for female victim when they face cyber harassment and if they lodge FIR against suspect? So can we hide the victim detail during the case or in the FIR? So it is, I think it is there, but for the child pornography offences, and in case of women for the aggravated offences like rape, etc. For the other offences under section 354, this remedy is not available. Then we have another question from Mr. Prabhu Ranjan. The question is, we can say digital signature is secured. If no, then why many organizations is using it? They are secured. There is no issue to that. Only the thing is you need to keep it protected. So that's why the organizations are using it. Rather, I would say that's the only way to secure the data. Section 3, the authentication of electronic record, clearly specify it. So be clear on it. That is the only remedy to secure the data. That is only remedy to authenticate the data. So next question we have from Mr. Prasad Reddy. As an investigating officer, if I install spy application in a suspect mobile, and if the suspect come to know that I installed, what could be the legal issues to me? Sir, it is a criminal offense. Like any other citizen, you are also liable to be prosecuted. Right. So next question is, will you help in retrieving the data of a victim with ransomware attack? Though we do it, we have our own forensic lab, but in case of ransomware, because of the use of advanced encryption like ASA 2048 and 4096, in most of cases it becomes very difficult to recover the data. So success rate is not more than 10%. Next question we have is, if anyone learning ethical hacking and got unauthorized access of any one computer, then will consider as an offense? Yes, it would be enough. Another question is from Dr. Anchal Arora. Once our computer or mobile got hacked, can we recover? I think I have answered this question. So next question we have from Bhavna Bhatt. Sir, if some customer is calling in BPO and abuses the customer care officer, so any customer care executive file a case against him or her? Sure, you can always file. Oral communication. So if you go by the definition of communication under section 2 subsection 1 of the IT Act, the communication include your oral communication. So that means in the digital medium, whether you are doing through data or whether you are doing it orally, both are covered. So be clear. So I have answered to most of the question. If any question remains, please send the question to me. We will give the answer to all the question. And now look forward to see all of you in my third session, where we will devote more time to the question. Thank you. Thank you very much for being with me. Thank you.